The vid screens across Shanghai flickered to life simultaneously, casting an eerie blue glow across the city's evening skyline. Dr. Sarah Chen paused her research recording, attention drawn to the massive display outside her laboratory window. The same scene was playing out in every major city across the globe. Tokyo, New York, London, Mumbai, all broadcasting the same unsettling footage. Humans laughing. Not just any laughter, but the genuine, uncontrolled kind that bubbles up from deep within. Birthday parties, wedding receptions, children playing in parks, moments of pure joy captured and displayed without context. But something was wrong. The footage was being analyzed, dissected, overlaid with complex mathematical equations that scrolled too fast for the human eye to follow. Fascinating primitives. Came the transmission, translated into every Earth language simultaneously. Such bizarre neural responses to stimuli. Such wasteful expenditure of energy. Sarah's hands tightened around her coffee mug as she watched. As one of the world's leading researchers in human behavioral psychology, specializing in the neurological impacts of laughter, she recognized something in these broadcasts that others might miss. The aliens weren't just observing. They were struggling to understand. The Arcsid, as they called themselves, had arrived 3 weeks ago. Their massive ships, geometric perfection in gleaming metal, had positioned themselves above Earth's 20 largest cities. There had been no demands, no threats of violence. Just endless broadcasts of human emotional responses, accompanied by their clinical observations. Notice how the facial muscles contract involuntarily. The emotionless voice continued. How inefficient, how vulnerable. Sarah's research partner, Dr. James Monroe, burst into her lab, tablet in hand. Sarah, you need to see this. The readings we took during their first broadcast, they're not what we thought. She took the tablet, scanning the data. During those first transmissions, her lab had been monitoring the neurological responses of test subjects exposed to the alien presence. But there, buried in the background noise, was something else. A pattern. Every time someone laughed during the initial contact, James pointed to the graph. There was a microscopic fluctuation in the alien's transmission signal. Sarah's mind raced. She'd spent 15 years studying the unique way human brains processed and responded to laughter. How it could strengthen immune responses, reduce stress hormones, create social bonds. But this suggested something far more intriguing. They're not mocking us, she whispered, the realization dawning. They're afraid of us. The Arcsid had evolved beyond emotion, beyond the messy, unpredictable responses that characterized human behavior. Their technology, their entire society, was built on cold, mathematical precision. Human emotional responses were literally foreign to their systems. As if confirming her theory, the broadcast suddenly shifted. The laughter clips were replaced by footage of human warfare, of violence and destruction. Observe their primitive aggression, the voice commented. Their inability to control basic impulses. But Sarah wasn't listening to the words anymore. She was watching the signal strength indicators on her equipment. With every display of human emotion, there was a corresponding wobble in the alien transmission. Tiny, almost imperceptible, but definitely there. James, get me everything you can find on resonant frequencies, and contact Dr. Patel in Mumbai. Her work on mass emotional responses might be relevant. The aliens had made a crucial mistake. In their attempt to demonstrate human weakness, they'd revealed their own. Their technology, their entire neural network, operated on principles that assumed absolute control, absolute precision. Human emotions, especially spontaneous ones like genuine laughter, created chaos in their perfectly ordered systems. As Sarah began drafting her preliminary findings, the vid screen switched again. This time, they showed humans crying. At funerals, at departures, at moments of overwhelming joy. Such leakage of vital fluids, the voice noted clinically. Such waste. But beneath the alien's words, Sarah heard something else. Fear. These beings, for all their technological superiority, couldn't comprehend the power of human emotion, and in their rigid mathematical universe, anything they couldn't comprehend was a threat. She worked through the night, analyzing patterns, correlating data. By morning, she had a theory. It wasn't just the physical act of laughter that disrupted their systems. It was the neural signature of genuine human emotion itself. The more authentic the feeling, the stronger the interference. The implications were staggering. Humanity's greatest weakness, our messy, unpredictable emotions, might just be our greatest weapon. As dawn broke over Shanghai, Sarah sent her findings to a secure server. Within hours, resistance cells around the world would have access to this information. The aliens thought they were studying humanity's flaws. Instead, they'd given us the key to their destruction. Outside her lab, the vid screens continued their endless parade of human emotional responses. But now, Sarah smiled at each display. Let them think they were demonstrating our weakness. Let them think their clinical observations proved their superiority. The time for laughter wasn't over. It was just beginning. 3 months after their arrival, the Arcsid finally showed their true intentions. The attacks began with surgical precision. Communication networks, power grids, transportation hubs. Not destroyed, but controlled. Their geometric ships descended from the sky, deploying sleek machines that moved with cold efficiency. Sarah watched from her makeshift laboratory in an abandoned subway station beneath Shanghai as the aliens systematically dismantled human infrastructure. The resistance had moved underground 2 weeks ago, after the first waves of neural pacification began. "Play it again," she instructed her team, studying the holographic display. The footage showed an Arcsid patrol encountering a street festival in Mumbai. The soldiers, if they could be called that, moved with machine-like precision in their liquid metal armor. But when they reached the crowd of laughing children throwing colored powder for Holi, their movements faltered. There, Dr. Patel pointed to the readings. The emotional signature peaks just before their shields flicker. Sarah nodded, adjusting the neural mapping display. Her initial discovery had been correct. Human emotions created interference patterns in Arcsid technology. But it went deeper than that. Each emotion generated its own unique frequency, and some were more disruptive than others. The purest emotions caused the strongest reactions, James explained to the gathered resistance leaders. Fear doesn't work. They understand fear. But joy, genuine happiness, especially shared happiness. A distant rumble interrupted him. The aliens were establishing another control node above ground. Each node expanded their neural network, slowly suffocating human emotion beneath a blanket of artificial calm. "We're running out of time," Colonel Chen, Sarah's sister and military liaison, stated flatly. "Their pacification field is expanding. Another month, maybe less, and we won't be able to feel anything at all." Sarah turned to the device they'd been developing. It looked cobbled together, because it was. Parts scavenged from abandoned tech, modified with theoretical physics that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. They called it the resonator. "The prototype is ready," she announced. "But we need more data, real-world emotional responses, not just recordings." Colonel Chen's expression hardened. "That's suicide. The surface is crawling with patrols. And even if we could get people together, the moment they detect a gathering." "Not if we time it right," James interrupted. He pulled up a map showing Arcsid patrol patterns. "Their algorithms are perfect, which means they're predictable. There's a 6-minute window between sweeps in the old theater district." Sarah studied the patterns. He was right. The aliens' greatest strength, their rigid adherence to mathematical precision, was also their weakness. They couldn't comprehend randomness, couldn't adapt to the chaotic nature of human behavior. "We need 40 people," she decided, "and we need them to laugh. Really laugh, not forced." The resistance leaders exchanged glances. Genuine joy was hard to come by these days. The Arcsid's presence seemed to drain the very color from the world, replacing it with their cold, blue-tinted efficiency. But they found volunteers. Stand-up comedians who'd been performing in underground bunkers, children who still remembered how to play, couples who'd fallen in love during the invasion, proving that even in darkness, the human spirit could find light. The plan was simple, and therefore terrifying. Gather the volunteers in the old theater, use the resonator to amplify their emotional output, and measure the effect on nearby Arcsid systems. Best case scenario, they'd prove their weapon worked. Worst case, they'd all be pacified, their minds wiped clean of emotion. Sarah worked through the night, fine-tuning the resonator. The device was designed to capture and amplify the neural signatures of human emotion, theoretically turning joy into a weapon. But would it be enough? The next evening, as the sun set behind the alien ships, 40 brave souls gathered in the darkened theater. Sarah watched from the control booth, her heart pounding as the resonator hummed to life. On stage, a comedian began his routine. The jokes were terrible, deliberately so. But as the tension in the room built, as the absurdity of their situation became clear, 40 humans hiding from emotionless aliens to laugh at bad jokes, something remarkable happened. Someone snorted, another person giggled. And then, like a dam breaking, real laughter filled the theater. Pure, genuine, uncontrollable laughter. The resonator's readings went off the scale. And outside, for just a moment, the constant hum of Arcsid technology stuttered. In that instant, Sarah knew they had a chance. The aliens had tried to analyze human emotion, to reduce it to equations and patterns, but they'd missed something fundamental. Emotions, especially shared ones, couldn't be quantified. They couldn't be predicted or controlled. As the laughter echoed through the old theater, Sarah made final adjustments to her readings. The Arcsid thought they were conquering Earth by suppressing our emotions. Instead, they were about to learn why humans had evolved to feel so deeply. The sound of approaching patrol units cut the experiment short, but they had their data. The Resistance now had proof. Human emotion, properly amplified, could disrupt Arcsid technology. Their greatest weakness truly was their greatest weapon. As they evacuated the theater, Sarah caught a glimpse of the alien ships through a broken window. Their perfect geometric shapes hung in the sky like frozen tears. Soon, they would learn to cry. The underground networks buzzed with encrypted data streams. Resistance cells across the globe shared their findings, each test of the resonator technology adding to their understanding. Sarah hadn't slept in days, poring over results from London, Lagos, Sydney, anywhere humans still fought against the expanding neural pacification field. Rio's test was successful, James announced, transferring new data to their central system. They used a carnival troupe. 30 seconds of sustained emotional output completely disabled an Arcsid maintenance node. Sarah studied the readings, noting the particular frequency patterns. It's not just the laughter anymore, she observed. Look at these spikes. Joy, love, even grief. Every genuine human emotion creates unique disruptions in their network. The discovery had spread like wildfire through the Resistance. Everywhere, humans were finding creative ways to generate powerful emotional responses. Underground comedy clubs became weapons testing facilities. Flash mobs of dancers appeared and disappeared between patrol cycles. Even small acts of human connection. A shared smile, a moment of comfort, sent ripples through the Arcsid's perfectly ordered systems. But the aliens weren't idle. Their response to these emotional insurgencies was devastating. Entire city blocks were placed under intensified neural suppression. The pacification field grew stronger, making it harder to feel, harder to connect. Moscow went dark last night, Colonel Chen reported grimly. Total emotional suppression. 8 million people, just empty. She placed a marker on their global map, another city lost to the spreading void of Arcsid control. Sarah felt the weight of those losses, but her latest analysis offered hope. Look at this. She pointed to a complex wave pattern. When their suppressors encounter concentrated human emotion, they don't just fail, they resonate. Like feedback in an audio system. You're saying we could overload them. James leaned closer to the display. Better. Sarah pulled up the global network diagram. Their entire neural network is interconnected. If we could generate a strong enough emotional response, amplify it correctly, it would cascade through their whole system. Colonel Chen finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. The implications were staggering, but the logistics seemed impossible. They'd need thousands of people, all experiencing genuine, powerful emotions simultaneously. And they'd need to do it before the pacification field became too strong to overcome. That's when Dr. Patel's team in Mumbai made their breakthrough. We don't need new emotions, her excited transmission explained. They're already there, just suppressed. The ARCSID aren't erasing our feelings. They're containing them. Like a dam holding back a river. Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. If they could break that dam, release all those pent-up emotions at once. The plan took shape over the next week. Resistance cells worldwide began modifying their resonators, not just to amplify emotions, but to break through the suppression field itself. They called it Operation Reverb. But they needed something more, something to trigger a powerful enough emotional response in a suppressed population. That's when Sarah remembered an old study from her research days about emotional contagion in crowds. Laughter isn't just a response, she explained to the resistance leaders. It's contagious. So are all genuine emotions. If we can free even a small group from suppression, their emotional response could spread exponentially. The timing had to be perfect. The ARCSID's control was growing stronger every day, their suppression field adapting to handle smaller emotional disturbances. They needed a massive, coordinated strike. They found their chance in the aliens' own overconfidence. Every day, the ARCSID still broadcast their observations of human behavior, still trying to understand and categorize human emotions. These transmissions connected every node in their network. We can use their own broadcast system, Sarah realized. When they transmit, their whole network becomes one giant resonance chamber. The pieces fell into place. Each resistance cell would target a local suppression node with a modified resonator. When the ARCSID began their daily broadcast, they would overload the nodes with concentrated emotional energy, breaking through the suppression field. The freed human's emotional response would then be picked up and amplified by the ARCSID's own transmission network. As they made final preparations, Sarah worked on the most crucial element, the emotional trigger itself. They needed something universal, something that could cut through the numbness of suppression and spark genuine feeling. The answer came from an unexpected source. In the deepest bunker beneath Shanghai, she found a group of children. Despite the suppression field, they were playing, finding joy in simple things. Their laughter, though muted, was real. Children, she whispered, watching them. They feel everything so purely. The final piece clicked into place. They would use the children's laughter as the initial trigger. Its purity would cut through the suppression, and its infectious nature would spread rapidly through the free population. As resistance cells worldwide reported ready status, Sarah looked at her sister. Colonel Chen nodded grimly. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Tomorrow, we remind them why they were afraid of human emotions in the first place." In bunkers and basement across the globe, humans prepared for Operation Reverb. The ARCSID had tried to suppress what made us human. Instead, they created a pressure cooker of emotion just waiting to explode. Tomorrow, the dam would break. The morning of Operation River dawned silent across the globe. In the command center beneath Shanghai, Sarah watched the countdown timer, each second bringing them closer to the ARCSID's daily broadcast. Every resistance cell had reported ready status. Modified resonators were positioned near suppression nodes worldwide. "Broadcast begins in 5 minutes," James announced, his voice tight with tension. "Children are in position." In secure locations near each target node, small groups of children waited. Somehow, their young minds had proven more resistant to the suppression field, their capacity for joy too fundamental to fully contain. They would be the spark that lit the flame. 4 minutes, Colonel Chen called out. ARCSID patrols maintaining standard patterns. No sign they've detected our preparations. Sarah monitored the global network display. Tiny lights marked each resistance cell, each modified resonator, each group of children. Years of research into human emotional response had led to this moment. Everything they knew about laughter, joy, and shared human experience would be tested. 3 minutes. Mumbai reports increased suppression field strength in their sector. Sarah's hands tightened on her console. The ARCSID were constantly adjusting their technology, strengthening their hold over human emotions. Had they waited too long? 2 minutes. Sydney's resonator showing power fluctuations. Reroute backup power to Sydney, Sarah ordered. They couldn't lose any nodes. The cascade effect required simultaneous disruption across the network. 1 minute. All cells confirm final status. In the tense silence, Sarah thought about everything they'd learned. The ARCSID hadn't come to destroy humanity. They'd come to perfect it, to remove what they saw as dangerous irregularities in human behavior. Emotion, to them, was a flaw that needed correction. 30 seconds. Around the world, resistance members prepared to activate their resonators. Near each suppression node, children waited for the signal to begin laughing, playing, feeling. ARCSID broadcast initiating. The familiar cold voice filled the global communications network. Observe the progress of emotional pacification. It began, showing images of blank-faced humans going about their daily tasks. Now, Sarah commanded. Worldwide, resonators hummed to life. Modified frequencies pierced the suppression field around groups of children. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, in a park in London, a child giggled. The sound was pure, genuine, untainted by fear or suppression. It rippled through the ARCSID's broadcast network, amplified by the resonator. Another laugh joined it from Sydney, then another from Lagos. On her display, Sarah watched the cascade begin. The children's laughter spread through the freed zones, infecting others with its joy. As more humans broke free from suppression, their emotions flooded the network. The ARCSID's broadcast stuttered. Anomaly detected in emotional containment systems. The voice reported, its usual clinical tone showing signs of strain. More and more humans broke free from suppression. Years of contained emotions burst forth. Joy, anger, love, grief, all flooding the ARCSID's network simultaneously. Their perfectly ordered systems, designed to suppress and control these emotions, now amplified them instead. Critical feedback detected, the voice announced. Attempting to compensate, but they couldn't compensate. Every adjustment they made was met with a new wave of human emotion. Their rigid mathematical approach couldn't adapt to the chaotic nature of genuine feeling. Suppression nodes began failing across the globe. With each failure, more humans broke free, adding their emotions to the cascade. The ARCSID's own broadcast network, designed to demonstrate their control over humanity, became the conduit for their undoing. Warning: system-wide resonance detected. Neural network stability compromised. Sarah watched in awe as the emotional feedback loop grew stronger. The ARCSID had built their entire system on the premise of controlling and suppressing human emotion. Now those same emotions were overwhelming their network. Shanghai node critical failure, James reported jubilantly. Beijing following. Tokyo. Seoul. City by city, the suppression field collapsed. The geometric ships above began to show signs of distress, their perfect forms wavering as the emotional resonance disrupted their core systems. But the ARCSID had one final defense. As their network destabilized, they initiated an emergency protocol. Their ships began charging weapons, preparing to destroy the sources of emotional disruption. They're targeting the population centers, Colonel Chen warned. Sarah had anticipated this. Activate secondary resonance pattern. The resistance cells adjusted their resonators, changing the frequency to match the weapon's power signatures. The same technical precision that made ARCSID technology so powerful now made it vulnerable to disruption. The weapons never fired, Overwhelmed by the emotional feedback loop and the targeted resonance disruption, the Arxid ships began to fail. Their perfect geometric forms cracked, letting through light that seemed to come from within. Primary network collapse in progress, James announced. It's working, Sarah. It's actually working. Across the globe, humans looked up at their would-be conquerors' failing ships. The emotional suppression was gone. For the first time in months, people felt freely, deeply, completely. And they laughed. The sound of human joy, unfettered and unafraid, rose from every city. It was the sound of freedom, of triumph, of humanity reasserting its fundamental nature. The very thing the Arxid had tried to suppress had become the weapon that defeated them. As the alien ships began to fall from the sky, Sarah realized they had done more than just win a war. They had proven that what the Arxid saw as humanity's greatest weakness was actually our greatest strength. The ability to feel, to laugh, to love, these weren't flaws to be corrected. They were the core of what made us human. And now, they were what made us victorious. 1 month after Operation Reverb, Sarah stood in her restored laboratory, studying the salvaged Arxid data core. The geometric ships had crashed, but their technology remained largely intact, a testament to their advanced engineering. More importantly, they'd left behind their complete records, including the true reason for their invasion. They were dying, she explained to the Global Recovery Council, assembled via holographic projection, not physically, but essentially. The data painted a clear picture. The Arxid had evolved to eliminate emotion, seeing it as inefficient and dangerous. Their society achieved perfect order, perfect logic. But in doing so, they'd lost something fundamental. They couldn't create anymore, James added, highlighting relevant data streams. No art, no music, no innovation. Their technology had plateaued centuries ago. They could replicate and refine, but they couldn't imagine. The council members absorbed this information in silence. The images from the data core showed Arxid civilization in its final stages, a society of perfect efficiency that had engineered itself into evolutionary dead end. They came to Earth not just to conquer us, Sarah continued, but to study us. They thought they could isolate the biological mechanisms of emotion, find a way to control and harness them without the messiness of actual feeling. Dr. Patel's hologram nodded thoughtfully. Instead, they discovered that emotion can't be contained. It's not just a biological response. It's a force unto itself. The implications of their victory extended far beyond mere military success. The resonator technology had revealed something profound about human consciousness and its connection to the physical world. Emotions, it turned out, generated their own kind of energy, one that could interact with and influence advanced technology. We're detecting residual effects, Colonel Chen reported. The emotional resonance patterns we created, they're still active, still influencing electronic systems, but not disrupting them anymore. It's more like harmony. Sarah pulled up the latest global readings, where the Arxid suppression field once spread darkness across the planet. A new kind of network had emerged spontaneously. Human emotions, especially strong positive ones, created subtle energy patterns that seemed to enhance rather than interfere with Earth's recovering technology. We're calling it the empathy web, she explained. It's as if Operation Reverb didn't just free our emotions, it amplified our ability to connect with each other. The evidence was everywhere. Cities reported increased instances of spontaneous cooperation. People found themselves more attuned to others' emotional states. The very technology that the Arxid had used to try to suppress emotion now seemed to be strengthening humanity's emotional bonds. But there were concerns. What if others come? A council member asked. The Arxid couldn't have been the only ones out there. Sarah smiled. That's why we're not dismantling their ships. We're repurposing them. She brought up schematics of the modified Arxid vessels. Their technology was perfect, just emotionally inert. By integrating our understanding of emotional resonance, we're creating something entirely new. The new ships would be powered not just by conventional energy, but by the conscious emotional output of their crews. The same force that had defeated the Arcsid would now help humanity reach the stars. "There's something else," James added, pulling up one final piece of data. In the Arcsid's last transmissions, after their network began to collapse, they felt something. The recording played. Through the clinical alien language, there was something new. A tremor, a variation, an irregularity that their perfectly ordered minds had never experienced before. "They laughed," Sarah said softly. "Just for a moment, just before the end, they remembered how to feel." In the months that followed, humanity began to rebuild. The crashed Arcsid ships were transformed into research centers, their technology studied and adapted. The resonator networks evolved into a global communication system that transmitted not just words and images, but emotional context. Children played in parks where suppression nodes once stood, their laughter strengthening the new empathic field that connected human consciousness in ways never before possible. Artists and scientists collaborated to explore the boundaries between emotion and technology, creating innovations that would have been impossible before the invasion. And Sarah returned to her original research, but with a new understanding. She had spent her career studying how humans processed emotion, particularly laughter. Now she studied how emotions processed reality itself. One evening, standing on her laboratory's roof and watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that seemed somehow richer than before, she heard children laughing in the distance. The sound rippled through the empathy web, touching minds and hearts across the city. She smiled, remembering the Arcsid's first broadcasts, their clinical analysis of human emotional responses. They had seen laughter as a weakness, a flaw in humanity's design. They never understood that in those moments of pure joy, of genuine connection, humans touched something profound, something that their perfect, emotionless logic could never grasp. The Arcsid had come to perfect humanity by removing our emotions. Instead, humanity had evolved to a new level by embracing them. And somewhere, in the vast darkness between the stars, other civilizations might be watching, might be calculating whether humanity's emotional nature made them vulnerable to conquest. Sarah almost pitied them. Almost. After all, she knew what they would learn in the end. The last sound they would hear would be laughter.